So Peter Waldo came to Bohemia in the 12th century, or maybe really early in the 13th century, just to connect the dots. And so at that point, Hungary was considered to be Waldense country. The whole country turned to the religion of the Waldenses, which is where we were in northern Italy. And so that's the 13th century, and Bohemia in that part was part of Hungary. So it would have included this area. So Waldo has an effect even as far north as here. It's mostly to the southern part. But it doesn't just end with Waldo. The next guy that comes along is Meletius. Meletius was another reformer. And Meletius was again going back to the word, and he was continuing to preach. And he goes to Rome, and when he's in Rome, he starts to preach in Rome. And what do you think his message was in Rome? His message in Rome was that the Pope is the Antichrist. So he goes into the middle of the to Rome, and he preaches that the Pope is the Antichrist. When he comes back here, the Pope isn't too happy about that. He pressures the king of Bohemia to put him in jail. So he gets put in jail, but then the people start to put a lot of pressure on the king to release him. So he ends up only being in prison for a short time. He ends up living to something like he's 80 years old before he dies. And then another man rises up, Stigna. And so Stigna preaches in this square. He first is preaching in the cathedral, but he has so many people coming to hear him speak that he has to speak in this square. And the square is filled with people back in the 13th century as he's preaching. Or maybe it's early 14th century, somewhere around that time frame. He's preaching in this square. So we think of the Reformation in 1517, but even in this square back in the 14th century and going into the 15th century, there's people that are listening to the idea that sola scriptura, the idea that Scripture is the foundation of all thought. And then the next guy that comes along is a guy named Genovius. And he doesn't just stay in Prague because Stigna's ministry is just really in Prague. He ends up going out and traveling the countryside. And in the countryside, they're doing back what Waldo did, which was saying that all people should receive communion in both kinds. And this was really big because what was the big separation between the priests and the people? The people could only get the bread. The priest got both the bread and the cup. And so if you say the people get the cup, what you're saying is you're basically undermining the distinction between the priesthood and the people. And if you undermine the distinction between the priesthood and the people, the priests don't dispense grace. Grace comes from God. And so this is really undermining the authority of the Pope, and it's based on Scripture. Finally, the Pope gets enough political pressure because he's trying to put political pressures on the King of Bohemia and the Holy Roman Emperor. And finally, they start the persecution. So the persecution happens way before Hus. In 1376, right? So, 1376, later in the 14th century, that's when they actually start to burn people at the stake. For if you celebrate with the cup given to the laity, you get burned at the stake. The Pope decrees that that's a heresy worthy of burning at the stake. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and share it with your friends. You can also visit www.discerninghistory.com for more videos and other resources.